This month, switching to block themes. I've done quite a few of these over the last 6 months or so. A lot of people now kind of just starting to jump on this kind of block full site editing bandwidth. And a lot of people ask me, what's the best practice for switching between the old themes to this new block environment? So I'm going to cover some of them today. Let's first get into some terminology, because different words that people use when we're talking about stuff in this environment. So the old themes, or themes that you used to use before 2020, are now being called classic themes. So that's something you need to kind of get into your head. So if you're looking at older themes, they're now called classic themes. What does that mean? Well, classic themes are generally, they only have the classic editor. So the kind of word editor with the buttons at top, bold, italic, and you've got this big free-fall editor that you just type in lots of stuff. That's a classic editor. That's what we're talking about when we talk about classic themes. Then you get to use a customizer for your settings. So you get to change the site identity, the site logo, things like that from the customizer. Normally, well, you'll get the PHP themes files, and you'll have your functions.php to extend your theme. What you won't find in a classic theme is there's no block editor and there's no full site editing as well. So new terminology, classic theme, it's old stuff now. We've kind of got stuff that sits in between. So for example, GeneratePress. I use GeneratePress as part of my block, part of my with GeneratePress, you can use either the classic or the block editor. Kind of switch between them. It doesn't really mind which one you use. So I always use the block editor with GeneratePress. You still get access to things like the customizer at the side, so you can go and change your site logo and tweak things, additional CSS. You've still got PHP theme template files and access to functions.php, but you don't have access to the full site editor. So you can't go and edit the header and footer and stuff as you can with the new block themes. So these are kind of like a stepping stone into, if you just want to experiment with the block editor, you're going to have a look at one of these kind of what they call block-based or hybrid themes. Then we have the full Monty. So we've got block or full site editor themes. So it can be a bit confusing, block-based and then block themes. So for example, 2024, 2023, 2024, they're full site editing themes. And what that means is you use your block editor for content editing, so there's no classic editor anymore. They've ditched that. So when you move to block, you've got to use the block editor for that. You get access to something called the full site editor. The full site editor is Automatic's way of allowing people to change the full part of the website. So traditionally, when you got a theme, you don't really get access to the header, the footer, and other bits in it. With the full block or FSE themes, you get access to everything. So theoretically, you don't need any more plugins to do the full site. You can do your header, the footer, sidebars, content, everything with the full site editing. They're a little bit changed to the theme files. So they're actually HTML rather than PHP, which is a bonus for people who don't understand coding in PHP. Now, a lot of people understand HTML and CSS, so it's a big bonus for that. And I'll show you a screenshot later on. Things that you will notice when you switch to a block editor is there's no customizer. That's probably the big thing. So that kind of disappears. You're like, what? How do I change stuff? There's no widgets either. Or at least there's no classic widgets when you go to the appearance menu. And there's basically no menu admin either. So when you switch over to block, the things that you're kind of used to with WordPress, kind of something disappears. A lot of people panic when they install the full site editor, because things kind of disappear and there's no kind of warning as to where things are. But with these, everything can be edited within this full site editor or the block editor. So you still have access to all this stuff, it's just kind of in a different place. Okay, so I think start with the negative first. Why would you not switch? Because a lot of people say, oh no, I don't want to go down that road. So you want to stick with classic themes, that's fine. It's completely your choice. You don't need to go on this bandwidth with the new block themes. Some reasons that you might not want to change, and these are valid reasons, is you don't have time or resources. So you'll see as we go through, changing from a classic to a block-based theme does require a little bit of effort. And some people just don't have that time or effort. It works, and that's fine with me. It just keeps working. So it's a valid reason. You might have a heavily customized theme. So you might have paid a developer several thousands to, generate extra functionality for your theme, coding stuff. And then once you change that theme, you're going to lose that because it's all built into the theme. So it might be a valid reason that you can't spend the extra money to redo all that stuff again. No plans to redesign your website. So if it works, that's fine. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's a valid reason as well. Probably one of the biggest ones that I've seen coming from the larger businesses is the rapid change in what we call the UI and UX. So when you're installing new versions of WordPress, you're going to notice that things are going to change. Icons change, things move around. It's a rather rapid pace of development that they're pushing out just now. I'm not happy with that, especially corporates. If you've got 3,000-4,000 people that you need to train, to use this system, you're having to retrain them all again. You don't want people, issuing support tickets to say, how do I then change the setting here? So if you're having to do training in your business, this might not be for you just yet until things settle down a bit. So those are valid reasons, to stick with a classic theme. Okay, so conversely, why should we switch to a block theme? The biggest thing that I could find out there, or biggest thing that people are commenting on, is a speed improvement. Now, I'm not convinced on that. I've not seen data, I've not seen proof to say that all block-based or full-site editing themes are faster than classic or other themes. In fact, I've seen data contrary to that. I've seen things like GeneratePress, which is a hybrid, beating 2023 and 2024 just out of the box. So when people say it's a speed improvement, I'm not convinced totally. I think it depends on what your theme is and what functionality you're adding to it. Depends a lot on the speed tests. And I don't know if you can really compare classic with hybrid with full-site editing block themes as like a one-on-one comparison, because they're different things. When you move to block theme, you are moving to the block editor, so everything is a block. So one of the good things about that is that you get to edit all the different areas, full-site editing. So you get to edit your header, you get to edit your footer, you get to edit all the different places. Whereas if classic themes, you're going to have to install plugins for that. It's like a classic theme, you don't get to change your header or footer. You might get to change the menu, or you kind of what goes in certain blocks, but you're restricted to what they are. You can't design it yourself, which you can with the block themes. Block themes come with reusable blocks, which is fantastic. Some people call them patterns, but reusable blocks. You can design a group of blocks, group them together, and save them, and you can then bring them back into other pages. So it's saving you a lot of time and energy, whereas with classic themes, you'd have to do that on a kind of page or post basis, or create a new template file, get a developer to do that. There is going to be less work switching between block themes. When you switch between two classic themes, all the content's in the database, everyone knows that, and that's good. But when the design changes, everything kind of mucks up, so you have to recreate the design, probably recreate some of the functionality because it's bound with the theme in the functions.php file. When you move to block themes, because everything's a block, so there's less work when you have to switch between block themes, because a block's a block. And last one, future-proof your website. Well, everyone knows that WordPress is moving towards the block. It is now block theme, and it's not going to revert. So blocks is the future of WordPress, whether we like it or not. But if you want to future-proof your website to make sure that you're getting the new features, and you're going with the blocks, then changing to a block theme is certainly going to be the way to do that. Okay, so who's already running a block theme, a pure block theme? Anyone? Sam, one at the back. Thoughts? Yay or nay?
Yeah, I wasn't big on PHP on WordPress like 6-7 years ago, so someone's JavaScript friendly, it's better, but it's hat for every head.
Yeah.
Too much white space.
Too much white space. Yeah. I get mixed bag from people as well when you talk about this, mostly from the interface. And the interface is a bit difficult to learn, and it changes. You learn something and it moves. So yeah, I'm getting resistance when I talk to people about going full site editing. I'm not convinced it's ready for production. I don't think it's polished enough. Compare with things like GeneratePress or even Elementor, which is so easy to use and intuitive. You know, even one example, I was using the block-based editor. I dropped an image block in there. You can't change the size of the image. You can change the ratio, but you can't change the size of the image. What? Which is crazy. So yeah, there's a lot of issues I think need to iron out before it becomes kind of real take on. Okay, so preparing for the switch. Let's say you've chosen, you've made your mind up, you're going to move completely to block full site editing. What do you need to do in order to prepare yourself for that? So of course, run a backup. That's anytime you change WordPress, you need to run a backup. But some things that you need to kind of know is your brand assets. So because you're changing from the theme, a lot of stuff's embedded in the theme, and that's going to go when you change over to a block base, just like it would with any kind of theme. So you're going to have to note things like your brand assets, your colors, your fonts, your styles, for those, so you can then replicate that in the new theme. You want to think about custom features, so short codes that you have, functionality that's in your functions.php file. That stuff you need to replicate or find alternatives to do that, because that's going to go once you switch to a block-based theme. Menus and widgets, then are tools for disappearing when you change themes. For that, so make a note of which menus you have, the menu locations you have, and any widgets that you have on sidebars or things like that, because they will change, or you'll need to recreate them because we're moving to blocks. And again, note your header, your footer, and your sidebar areas, because your classic theme, when you switch, they completely go. You need to recreate those in the block theme. My note is to take screenshots. So take screenshots of everything, like every single page of your website. Screenshot, just so you can kind of go back and see what it was. Or use that Wayback Time Machine to see what your website used to look like if you forgot to take screenshots. I've had to do that several times. So here's a migration checklist. These slides will be available on the Meetup page, so you don't need to jot them all down. I'll release those. This is kind of my checklist that I've used on a few FSE migrations for those. So just check all those off as you go down. I'm not going to go through all of them because it's fairly simple. You can read that later. Probably the biggest thing is to check your theme templates and template parts, because that's the big change between classic and block-based stuff, is the way that it handles templates and template parts. You need to recreate those. So there's a lot of recreation. This is why one of the reasons not to move is it's a lot of effort to move to this. So you're going to be creating a lot of, recreating a lot of stuff within the block environment. Okay, so saying that, here's some migration tips that when you are moving to a block-based theme, here's some of the things that you should be looking at. The first one is site logo. Now, I found animated GIFs for this because it's a lot easier than me trying to explain it. But because you lose the customizer with full site Yearn, then a lot of people get stumped on where do you change the site logo, because that's the only place people know where you change the site logo. So in full site editing, the block, you go into the full site editor, and then you will find that there's now a block. Go into the header, and there'll be a block that's site logo or site title. And that's where you then change that. And that'll be replicated throughout the entire site for those. It's kind of like a settings. It's kind of embedded into the full site editor. And this is where the intuitive part maybe starts to flow a little bit. People not understand that you change the site logo within the editor, but it changes everything. But that's how you do it. So site, you come in your PNG, WebP, whatever it is, and you've got a few settings that you can change, to make it look a little bit fancier. But that's where the new site logo is, in the editor. Global styles and colors. So this is a relatively new thing to 5.6, I think it is. So now we've got this, whereas in classic blocks you had CSS and you'd change all your styles and your colors through CSS. WordPress now has this idea of a global styles. So it's one area within the full site editor that you go into and you set up all your colors and all your styles for those. And then that replicates down through all the different blocks. So you have site-wide styles, things like your hyperlinks, your titles, your headings, but you also have block-based styles as well. So you can style particular blocks like the text block, the paragraph block, the heading block, and things like that. And again, it's all with the full site editor. So you go into editor, and then you'll see the little icon at your top right, the little half moon thing. That's where you go in to choose all the global styles. And you get access to typography, colors, and layouts as well. So this is the blocks, so you can get to style different blocks, as I say. You can go into there, so if you style a paragraph block, that's going to replicate throughout the entire site now. So a kind of different way to change your brand through the theme. And it's all supported by this little file. So you don't find this file in the classic theme. So it's a file called theme.json, and it can be very, very long. I've just a few lines out of it. You don't need to be a developer to understand what it is. In fact, you can do everything through the full site editor, and then it writes to this theme file. But this is a new file that's in the block-based themes, and you can go in. So if you're a theme designer, you can go in and edit this theme, and then that will then style your entire site, your site components, and your blocks for there. So this one just now is just setting up a color palette. So a primary and a secondary color for your website. But it goes on and on and on and on. So it can be quite a big file. But just bear in mind that that's a big difference between classic and FSE blocks. Okay, navigation block. So now we're thinking about menus. Okay, so before in classic themes get to menus, you go into appearance and menus, you set a theme menu location, and then you choose a menu and you create items and you add it all into it. You don't do that anymore. Okay, this is probably one of my bugbears. Menus and navigations is all block-based now, which of course everything's going block-based, but I find this quite tricky. Okay, so again, similar with the site logo, you've got this idea of you're not just creating the design, you're also setting up some things. So this is you actually creating menus as you would do it in appearance and menus. So it kind of saves it into the site. There's quite a lot about this. So it's called a navigation block. So within the navigation block, that is your kind of bar with your navigation. But once you go into navigation block, then you get a menu item. So you create the menu item within the navigation block. And within that navigation, navigation item, then you can then go search for your URLs or paste your URL into it. But it's all done within this block. And it gets a little bit icky because that's the navigation block there. And then you can imagine you've got a little block that spins out for item and a little dialog box that comes up that you type in to search for your URL and stuff. So it all kind of gets really tight and small in there. So I'm not a fan of this. I think it's got a lot of work for the user experience to do, but that's how you set up your menus in a full site editing. Yeah, so here's menu items in here. So you create your menu, and then you get to have a search for all your items or pages or posts, and you type in that, and it kind of narrows it down. And then if you want to bring stuff out to an extra level, you've got to kind of drag it and figure out exactly where the indent goes. So it's a bit tricky. I prefer the old interface, but it is what it is. So a lot of people get stumped again. If you're just looking at a blank full site editing block theme, how do I create a menu? Go into editor and navigation block. You can start to see how the workload kind of goes up. So once you start explaining to people the work that you need to do to migrate from a classic to a full site editing block theme, and the work you need to put in, so it can all add up quite quickly. Okay, the cover block, it's a relatively new one. I think this is a video. Yes, it's playing. Excellent. So this is the kind of the replacement for what you might think of as like a hero section. So if you think of a landing page or a home page, it's usually got a graphic at the top with some text overlaid. This is kind of the replacement for that. It doesn't replace sliders. It's kind of more of a hero section. So the idea is you have this block that can be full width. You give it some text. You can set a background as well. And there's a few other options that you can do. You can change colors and geotones and things like that. But essentially, you're setting up a hero image. So this is where it kind of goes back to what you need to prepare before you move. So things like have a look at your brand assets, the sections that are within your current design. What do you need to replicate to set up? So yeah, again, this will be used on a lot of landing pages. So you've got your hero image for that. Set background, and then you've got your overlay text on top of it. I don't think you can do videos yet. I think it's just image. It could have changed. But yeah, so you can set the text to be up, down, in the middle, all the stuff. So this is kind of the replacement for a hero image, not really slider, but yeah, cover block. There we go. Okay, next thing to look at is sidebar and widgets. So if you've used to all the classic themes, you've got your blog, you've got your sidebar, you've got all your things that go in there. Might be an email sign up, it could be your tags or categories. That's all gone from the menu, so you don't access that anymore with full site editing. And again, you're editing this within the editors. All this is done within editor. What you're going to see when you install a block or FSC theme is you're going to introduce to what's called template parts. So you've got your main pages, your single, your post, your front page, but then you've got things like template parts. So a sidebar is a template part, and they're indicated in purple. And it depends on which, on the theme as to which template parts are going to come with. This is 2024, I think. So if you open that up, you can see that the header is a template part. We've got a footer, which is a template part, and now we've got a sidebar. And they're just separate files within the theme. But because we're in full site editing, you get to edit with template parts as blocks. So this is an example. So the sidebar is a template part, and all the sidebar is actually a collection of blocks all grouped together. So there'll be a column, and then you just drag the blocks in there. You can have block patterns, but it's basically a container block for that. So again, a lot of people get confused as to what sidebar is. It's from Classic, they're used to going into the admin menu, the appearance, but that's all gone. So you need to do it all through this one here. Full site editor. So again, that can be a bit of a pain. I know a lot of companies who use sidebars a lot, stuff, especially kind of blogs, but more archives and stuff as well. So recreating all those can add to your resources for that. Widgets. So widgets are still there, but widgets are now blocks, so you don't see them as widgets in the admin menu anymore. What you've got to do is kind of go in sidebar, so you're within your site, and then you're adding blocks. So you have created blocks for the widgets. So you've got your archives, your latest posts, short codes. You can put anything in there, but they've recreated the kind of standard widgets as blocks now. So that's where you to go and add them in. If you're on the Classic editor, you'll know it's just one big editing space like a Microsoft Word document. When you do move over to a block theme, it can be a hybrid block or FSC block theme. Once you start using the block editor, if it detects the classic themes, it actually brings in what's called a classic block, which is just a tiny MCE editor on there, but you'll find it has an option to convert blocks. So if you go and fill in with a full site editor, you might as well just do the job completely and convert all your classic stuff over to blocks. Otherwise, you're not going to get the benefits from using blocks. It does a fairly good job. Some things to be hit or miss, especially maybe the things like quotes or stuff that's embedded in the content. But it does a fairly good job of converting the whole content into block-based stuff. There's been some occasions where I've had an error that comes up that says it can't do that, or you've saved in, the blocks are kind of all messed up. Sometimes that does happen, but on the majority of the times when you convert to blocks, it does a good job. But again, it's all right if you've got a small website with 4 or 5 pages and half a dozen blogs. But you're starting to think about large sites. When you've got thousands of pages, maybe you've got blogs going all the way back to 2014. This is a big job. It's a huge job, and it's not something that can be done batch. I love a batch conversion that you can run over it, but it's done on a page per page basis. So, if you're thinking about how to quote for your conversion, that's probably one of your biggest time commitments, is converting everything from Classic to block. Okay, some kind of difference in the theme files. We kind of looked at that early on, but this is kind of side by side, Classic versus block theme files. So Classic on your left-hand side, you can see they're all PHP files. So of course you need to be a developer or coder to change all the templates. You can't just go in and edit stuff for that. And on the right-hand side, you've got the block theme. So 2021 theme, 2023 FSC block theme. You can see there's a little bit of changes. First thing you notice, everything is HTML, which is good news for the non-coders. You can go into those templates and just change HTML. Most people know HTML and CSS. For that, it's roughly the same structure. What you'll notice is there's no functions.php, which can stump a lot of people. You can add one in, and it will work. But in general, you're adding functionality, either creating a new block, you're creating a plugin for that, or using something like a code snippet. They don't really want you to put functions.php in there anymore. Again, we can see a little bit changes. So we've got parts, we've got patterns and styles. So it looks less, but there's actually kind of more in it because it's kind of more structured with folders in those. But again, they're all HTML, it's CSS, it's JavaScript. So it's kind of more familiar for people to understand. HTML. The block-based theme is an index.html now with the theme file rather than index.php. You'll see that the HTML files themselves are simpler when you go in there initially, but they use a lot more extensive parts or patterns. So you'll see here that there's a difference between the PHP. So that's a general 2020 PHP file. So you get your header, you get your footer, you've got like the loop in the middle. But the HTML file for the block one is a lot simpler. Again, it uses template parts a lot. So when you're looking at block or full site editing themes, you're going to see there's a lot of template parts. So you might go into one file and think, okay, I'll edit this file, but no, you'll see, template parts. You need to go and find them in the theme file. And you'll probably find if you go into footer, then that's loading in template parts as well. And if you go into that one, you have the template parts. You might be going into 3 or 4 files just to find out exactly what you want to do to customize that specific theme. But it's HTML, so that's good. Block themes, getting towards the end. A quick one tonight. I also deleted that. There we go. Block themes. So here are some starter themes for you to look at. 2023 and 2024, they're always shipped with WordPress. You can always have a look at those. They're purely block-based and FSC themes. There's Nev, FSC. I don't know if I pronounced that right. But that's a business blog style. There's Brixie Pro. There's a lot of people using that one at the moment. There's not a lot of full site because it's relatively new. But Brixie Pro is getting good ratings. There's Raft as well, again, business and blog. And I picked out another couple ones. So Edu Pro, Block Pro, that's kind of a more school, college, uni kind of based informational website. And then Jackson is the one that people seem to be jumping on for. So it comes built in with carts and checkout page and stuff like that with books already in there. So those are the ones that you can jump in and have a look if you're interested in seeing how they work. Some pros and cons. That's the final slide. So some pros, enhanced flexibility. That's basically coming because you're using blocks for everything now. So once you get used to block, everything's a block. So it's good. So that goes with unified editing experience. You're just managing blocks all the time. You don't need to switch between big editors and stuff. No need for child themes. These are pros and cons I took from other people's sites as well as my experience. I don't quite agree that no need for child theme is necessarily a pro. I think it could be a con. What you'll find with block themes and FSC themes is if you go back to the classic themes, there's quite a difference between a separation between design and content. With FSC themes, it's all kind of bundled in together. So you've got your design, because you're designing all the blocks, you've got your content, you've got your setting, it's all kind of squidged in. I quite like the separation from child themes, but with block themes, you just edit that one theme and it's all done. So it's up to you, is it a pro, is it a con? Accessibility improvements, yes. The team's been working hard to make it accessible. However, if you put the full site editor in front of someone and the classic editor, like to use and be used, classic editor. So accessibility, there's still some issues with the new UI and UX of the full site editor. It's not easy to use from an accessibility point of view because you're having to click on buttons and everything flies everywhere. So there's work that needs to be used on that, but they are getting there. Modern technologies were one that came up, so JavaScript, HTML5, CSS3, and all your goodies within that. Streamline maintenance because you're not having to look after as many plugins because everything's kind of more block-based now, so it should theoretically be a little bit easier to maintain your site. Of course, you're going to get new features. If you move fully block, then all the new versions of WordPress are going to support that and have new features, new blocks that come out, which is definitely a pro. And the community is really kind of gearing up towards block stuff. So the more WordPress gets into blocks and more stuff comes out, the more the community has to shift, and it will shift, and it is shifting. So you're still going to find a great community if you go block-based. Some cons, we talked about the learning curve. The new editor, the new block-based editor is very different. So, you know, if you're taking someone from classic editor to the new block-based editor, they will freak out. So it's a large learning curve for that to learn exactly what everything is and how to use it. There are theme compatibility issues, so you will find that some plugins will break, won't work with a block-based theme, just because it's a different beast. So that could be an issue. Performance concerns, so I had that as something that people said were a thumbs up for moving to block. Yeah, I'm not 100% convinced. I think you see more data to see if they are performing better. There's a limited choice of themes. You know, it's just because they're new, that's all. There's a huge overhead in transition, as we saw. You know, once you move from classic theme to block, you're having to recreate pretty much everything. So it's a big transition, a huge time consideration. And cost as well. So that's if you've got functionality that's bound with your classic themes, you have to recreate that if you want it back. So there's potential costs in that. There's always a risk of data loss when you move to themes, whether it's your widgets or sidebars disappearing or anything else. It's always a risk. So it's okay, again, if you've got a personal blog, but if you're talking to companies, then you know they can't really afford things just to kind of disappear. So it's something you have to plan into your migrations. I thought it was a cheeky one. Dependency on blocks is a con. I know. It's kind of, you're kind of committed if you're going to blocks. It's the way that WordPress is going to go, but you know, you are dependent on blocks for that. That's it. Try to consolidate as much as I could from my experience and from other people online, a little bit of ChatGTP as well, of course. Yeah, that's my kind of bit about moving to a block-based theme. I've not found it easy in some circumstances. Trying to explain that to a business, like a company, into what they need to invest. Usually they turn white because they think it's a simple thing because they're used to switching themes. You know, for the past 15 years, we've been redesigning a website with a new theme, just go to developer, that's fine, new design, bang. This is a different beast. So different concerns, different risks for that. So just be aware. It's great for you to play on your own, but if you're advising clients, then you need to kind of really think about all the stuff that you need to move to get a block-based theme going. Any questions? Yeah. Those are my details if you want to.
If you've got a content site, travel site, say,
Yeah.
that's running on multi-site with, say, 27, 28 different sites, it's all using an outdated theme.
Yep.
Classic, of course. What is the easiest way? You've got a standard content. It's the contents that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's been amended quite a lot. If I gave you that and said, right, I want to switch it over into a more modern site looking forward.
Yeah.
Because I can see it slowly running down, and WordPress is changing, well, it has changed already.
Yeah.
So I'm already using the Classic Editor plugin, right? If you wanted to switch, what is the best approach in your experience to do that?
You need to get a developer and designer involved. So you need to think about the migration first. So don't even think about new design or functionality. You need to think about the migration. What assets do you have? What is it you're trying to replicate? What needs to be replicated? So get the designer in, get the developer in to go through what technically you need to change. So there needs to be a plan as to how you migrate from Classic to block-based theme. Because you're recreating everything, it's a different way to do stuff. I would take one of your sites and run it through like a migration plan. See what you need to keep, what needs to change. What does that mean for changing between Classic and block? What's involved for that? How many hours? What needs to be done? Who needs to be involved in that? End up designing your block-based theme and then apply that to the other ones, assuming that they're all kind of roughly the same.
Multi-site and folder-based sites.
Yeah.
You can't split them up. They're not separate domains, a single domain. So, that's the problem.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy because with a network site, you've got network plugins that activate throughout the different multi-sites. Moving a multi-site is going to be a huge job. You're probably looking at a recreation, I would think. So rather than migrate and change the existing site, you probably better, easier, less stress just to recreate the site again as a block-based.
Yeah, I mean, basically to take all the content out and put it back.
Take the content, yeah, but completely new site and bring the content into that would probably be the easiest way, I think, to do a multi-site. A lot of work. Yeah. Yeah, question?
I'm not a developer. I'm working with a client. I create all the content for them, and so I'm happy to provide that. So we're talking to the developer, asking them right now to code. And I just want to make sure, I don't know a lot about it, but is it going to affect any search engines and so forth, SEO, and how if we were to proceed and go to blocks?
Theoretically, no. The end render page will be the same, regardless of if you're using blocks or a theme file. So the content's not going to change. It's just a kind of framework around about it. In fact, it should be a little bit beneficial because you've got less, theoretically, there's less stuff, structural stuff getting in the way of your content if you move more towards blocks. It's more structured. If you actually look at the HTML code, it's more understandable for the search engines than whatever Joe Blogg's theme that you've already been using for that. So, for example, Google understands what a header block is, a paragraph block is. So it's more structured. It can easily understand the content within that. So you'll probably get some benefits But yeah, things won't disappear as long as you're recreating it. Yeah.
And to get them to streamline that process for developers, I've just gone into Google sites and basically built what I want, because that is a lot easier than WordPress. So I just built what I want, and yeah, I'm pretty much just saying, can you replicate this and provide them the assets?
Yeah.
Is that going to save money on their quote?
I don't think so.
No.
At the end of the day, you're still just, it doesn't matter if you use Canva, Photoshop, if you do a Google site, at the end of the day, a designer still got to go through, or a developer still got to go through and say, yeah, well, I need to write this bit, write that bit, write this bit. Theoretically, creating a full site editing theme should be more straightforward than developing a classic theme, because they're not having to write PHP code. You know, they're just basically creating the structure and the components within the theme. However, because it's relatively new and you've seen what we need to take into account, that can probably push prices up a little bit further. Because at the moment, developers are comfortable writing PHP templates. You know, whereas you ask them to create a full site editing block-based theme, that's a bit newer, a bit on the edge, a bit uncertain for people to quote.
So, widely, it's understood that those developer agencies it's relatively new to them, so it might be a bit of a learning curve for them as well.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. Yes. No, but yes. Yeah. Because a lot of agencies, and I put quotes up because sole trader, single people could be agencies nowadays.
Yeah.
But a lot of agencies have invested a lot of money in what's the easiest way to say this? Developing a more complex stack within their system that they can just, you know, create templates, push a button, and it kind of generates all that stuff. So, you know, yeah. Whereas that doesn't apply to block-based theme. You can't develop a block-based theme with PHP. So all their internal stacks, when they're using npm to compile stuff, when they're using SCSS to kind of cascade in, that doesn't necessarily work with block-based themes. The CSS will, but the PHP stuff is kind of gone. So all these agencies that have all these kind of fancier packages and ways to generate theme files, they're going to struggle when they move to block-based themes because it's HTML, basically. Yeah. So yeah, just ask them what's your method to approaching a block or FSE theme, and see what they say. If you don't get a response within a few seconds, I would say they probably don't know. Yeah.
With the block base, if I have a client side and I code it out for a staging and I create what I have to create, what is the best way to push the new section live? Olden they can just, PHP.
Yeah.
What do we do with that?
Theoretically, you can do the same because it's just HTML files and CSS.
So we create the HTML, not the font side?
Yep. So for example, if someone comes up to you with, say they want a landing page for our sales page with a call to action and different groups, then you could create a template file, but it'd be a CSS template file, an HTML CSS template file, rather than a PHP one. So you could do that on the staging site, get it all ready, and then just move that stuff over to production and then just assign that to the page.
But what about if it's Tango in, like the section is actually a reusable box, and I have to use a reusable block that was already originated.
Yeah.
And to move it over, currently, I have to duplicate and redo everything on the live site.
Yep.
Because I inherit that section.
Right.
Any quick way?
I'm not 100% sure on that. Sam, do you know, can you export blocks? I think you can.
You can at code level.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not as easy to do.
Yeah.
Is it in the database?
Sorry?
Is it in the database?
Some parts in the database, but mostly if you're like scaffolding out a block, it's in the actual code level in the block folders within the thing.
Yeah.
And if you use npm, again, separate again, WordPress has their own npm package automatically. It's separate again, and it's scaffold in the box file.
I don't think there's an easy way of taking a staging site block, reusable block, and then just moving it over. I think there's going to be, at some point, you're going to have to go into the live site and say, okay, well, this is a new block, I'm going to add it in. So, yeah.
I thought that if everything is all in the database, you can just go inside the database and copy the whole lot and chuck it in.
In theory, yes.
You can do that too?
In theory. In practice, it's a lot more complicated, unfortunately.
This is where the new block-based themes, remember I talked about the separation of design and content? It's kind of all merged into block-based themes now. So you've got your styles is embedded, you've got inline styles, you've got your structural stuff is actually in there. You know, yes, you've got your theme files, which is HTML, but a lot of the stuff is all kind of mixed in together. You know, your site logo, for example, you're inside the blocks doing that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
The best way I found was use the block package plugin. So you create the block as a plugin, and then it has all the data in the actual built plugin, and then you can just import that into a site as a plugin, and all the actual styling, the scaffolding, like data logic is all actually built in there. It's just a little bit
If the site that you usually do creating and adding extra on is inherit from some of the other reusable blocks, it's hard to go and scaffolding and everything is out.
It's harder.
So the technology is not there yet.
Depends on the use case. Yeah. So that for everybody. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So some of these things that we take for granted when we're, as developers and designers, when we're designing the classic themes, it's going to become a more challenge. We're working just purely in block-based stuff. You know, you'll find out a lot of times if you've got a customer with a classic theme, they'll have a whole heap of plugins. They'll have a whole heap of stuff in the functions.php. Ideally, those should be recreated as blocks. And as Sam mentioned, you're probably going to have a plugin for each of those for that. So again, you're adding on to the extra work that you need to do just to recreate what you've already got, which makes the reasons why I shouldn't move to a block-based theme seem pretty appealing.
So you've converted sites from the old PHP to the new block system.
Yeah.
All right. Obviously, your site's 10 years or more old.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in Google. What effect, if any, have you found on the organic results or SEO when you switch from one to another? Yeah,
I think that was the same question that the lady at the back asked. So,
sorry, I couldn't hear.
That's right. Theoretically, there's going to be no difference. There's not going to be no negative difference because when you're creating a new theme, you're outputting the same stuff. Doesn't matter how you do it. So if it's classic theme with PHP templates, if it's a block-based template, if you're using SpaghettiOs, doesn't matter. You're recreating the same content that Google sees.
Will the structure be the same? Will the URLs be the same?
URLs will be the same, yeah. But the HTML will be a bit different, okay? But it should be easier for Google to understand that because when you look at a block-based theme, you'll see it's got like HTML comments that says paragraph block, header block, image block. Google loves that sort of stuff because it knows exactly what it is. You know, whereas if you take a classic theme, you know, of ThemeForest or something, have a look at the code inside, it's got, you know, div, this name, and your content's down here, you know. Whereas with the block-based themes, it's a lot easier. They've lifted all that structural stuff up. It's a lot easier for Google to read. So theoretically, your content shouldn't change. Google shouldn't see a difference. But underneath, back end, it should understand a little bit more about the website. That's my thoughts. I don't know if there's any data out there to prove that or not. But yeah, great question. Anything else? Otherwise, I think I'll wrap up. No? All good? Okay, well, thank you very much.